Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Tuesday's edition, and we are broadcasting from different parts of the country today. I'm in beautiful Delray Beach, Florida, and my guest, Tom Amenta. I guess you're in the now freed-up city of Chicago, where you're going to have someone other than Lori Lightfoot as mayor. Congratulations, Tom.
It is a wonderful day for the city. It was the lead up to that was hilarious because people were, these are relatively centrist candidates, both of them running for mayor by Chicago political standards, and people are freaking out. And I'm just like, wait a minute, you mean if you tell someone that crime's a problem and you see the results of it, maybe you should do something to fix it? Like, oh my gosh, Lori, sorry. And then she tried to make it like because she's a person of color and because she's a woman, that's why she lost. I'm like, wait a minute, you won 4 years ago.
Right.
Don't bring that here. Like, you won, but not because of that you lost. Like, come on, man, just take the L with some grace. But yeah, we are quite excited here in the Windy City to have a slightly different windbag take over.
Yeah, before we get into the meat of national politics and what's going on here, briefly, Tom, for our viewing and listening audience, a little bit about these two candidates. Isn't one guy pro-cop? Let's make it a safe city, and is the other guy defund the police? I mean,
I wouldn't say that. I actually, in fairness, they're both just have different approaches to crime, and it's getting a little twisted up, especially the farther right in the media you go. Yes, one of them is he's got the endorsement from the Chicago Police Association to the point where once he made it, the police commissioner and one of the DAs, incidentally, the DA was a Trump appointee, by the way, just so we're keeping this fair, immediately resigned. Like, oh man, like this guy wants to come in and change it. The other guy really isn't to defund the police necessarily. It's just that he has a bigger belief in sort of social work style programs that are going to come in. But both of them ran on very strong, very aggressive pro law enforcement, dialing some of these things back. And if for the viewers that have like traveled to Chicago and things like that, the Gold Coast, or if you haven't, the Gold Coast / Michigan Avenue is where all the really wealthy, ritzy, Harry Winston and Prada and all that, like they were literally a series of smash and grabs that in the absolute heart of the economic engine for tourism of Chicago. And Lori Lightfoot's solution was she was publicly saying, oh, well, you should get better security.
Right.
That's literally what law enforcement's for. Like, Lori, the police are the security. So if you want to know why, we're like, yeah, well, of course she lost. It had nothing to do with her being a her. It's like, that's always the banger of a line I go to.
She garners 17%. So now you're going to have a real mayor, whichever one of those candidates win. All right, let me get on to some stuff, Tom. There's a lot of economic news happening right now. Jerome Powell is on the Hill speaking to the Senate today, and his message was pretty clear. Higher rates, and they're going to stay high for a longer period of time. And I saw a lot of Paul Volcker in that speech today. They are not going to let up until this inflation rate's down to 2%. And boy, you and I both had a chuckle over Elizabeth Warren. I mean, Tom, for our viewers and listeners, just share the sheer hypocrisy of Warren and what's going on here.
I mean, first of all, it's just when you put free money into the economy, and we've had this conversation before, when they shut everything down in COVID and that first package that Trump, passed, that's one of those literally when Adam Smith said government should operate at a deficit, this is exactly what he meant, where it's like, this is a catastrophic thing. Government needs to step in and ensure that things are smooth and the people are taken care of. No problem with it. The second one, honestly, again, you guys all know by now that I'm a pretty centrist person politically. I understood it. I was okay with that. Like that second stimulus round, like there's a little bit of uncertainty. The vaccine hadn't really taken off, or if it was like plenty enough to say it. But the third one that anyone with a basic grasp of macroeconomics looked at and said, oh, this is going to be bad. We are just putting pure free money into the economy. And that's what happened. And now we are frankly like reaping the rewards of that, which is higher inflation. And when you added the supply chain snarls, you added suddenly you have more surplus in consumer goods, and just down and down and down and down for that unique set of challenges. This is what happens. I mean, look, I was joking with the producers right when we got on. Like, I would like to thank Jerome Powell for both crushing my 401k and potentially my dream of owning a home again all in one day and in one shot. But like, this is what is required to order to have a healthy, functioning, long-term economic strategy. Like, this isn't rocket science. This isn't beyond the pale. We're not arguing about like, slight fine measures of policy. This is like week 2 of a college 102 macroeconomics course. That's just what you do.
Yeah, it was really pretty basic stuff. And, he was hinting the fact that, yes, unemployment might go from 3.5 to 4.5. Again, not the worst thing in the world. I mean, we are at historical lows right now. I remember times, Tom, where if you just told an administration, hey, unemployment's going to be 4.5% when you're running for reelection, they'd have died for it. I mean, that is a really good number. And what does Elizabeth Warren do? She throws it out and just completely twists and turns it the wrong way and says, oh, so you're going to take pleasure in, kicking 2 million people out of the workforce. And I thought Powell's response was great. He said, Senator Warren, are we going to penalize all workers for the fact that we don't have 2% inflation and it's sitting currently at 5.5 versus making a small sacrifice to get it down for the benefit of all? I thought he handled it great. And she is such an obnoxious, what? It's just, oh my God, it was, anyhow, most of the senators on both parties, excluding her, asked substantive questions. And it wasn't like in the House. These were real questions, people that cared about the country and the economy, not some grandstander like Warren up there.
Yeah, it was just it was pandering to her far left base, and I found it entirely inappropriate. Okay, especially we're talking about housing, and you look at that market hasn't come down. You are the average American. The dream of the average American family is to own a home, and right now that in large part is out of reach. In part because interest rates are so high. I mean, I'm literally in the market right now, and again, my day job is in tech. I am doing just fine for myself, and I am certainly in a position to be able to buy in if I choose to. But my buying power, what it could have been a year and a half ago, right when things were starting to come up, so roughly that 4% mark compared to what it is now. I mean, even with the VA loan, which is going to knock off up to 0.5 point for me, I'm still looking at 6.2 right now. Right. My parents' mortgage is a 2.8. Okay, we were talking about it the other night. That's the real challenge here, madam.
Yeah.
Madam Senator. It's inflation pricing people out of being able to afford necessities. That's the problem here. Okay, it's not a basic market correction. Which, please, again, we talked about this last time I was on. My sector in tech is a bloodbath right now. I have so many friends that are unemployed or have taken gigs to get them underemployed. I really feel for them. I have a tremendous amount of empathy. I'm trying to actively help them get jobs whenever possible because they're my people. But even all of them can kind of understand. Some of the companies where I was like, yeah, we were a little overstaffed. We were doing these things. There are things that are market corrections, right? And if you can't understand that, then maybe have the people that want to talk about it that do understand it take the lead.
Well, only about 20% of Americans right now, Tom, can afford a house based upon where current prices are, current mortgage rates are. That cost of housing since the pandemic, it's up over 30%. And that's even with a 10 to 12% decline over the past 6 months. Mm-hmm. So I understand it completely. And these 30-year fixed, with Powell having to do what he's doing with these interest rates, you're looking at 30-year fixed pushing near 7% right now. And look, some sectors have not been affected by this, but tech and housing have. And housing is going to continue to be affected. Listen, some of these prices got way out of whack. Yep. I mean, I can attest for it here in the state of Florida because we got 800 to 1,000 people a day coming into the state.
Well, I mean, and here's the other thing: if you want to have sort of a left of center policy, and you want to have a conversation that I'm actually willing to have the nuance to, how about we have the conversation about how many VC and other capital firms just bought up housing like it was going out of style because they saw it as a good investment, again because there was so much free money in the economy during the pandemic. I understand the economic model of it. I can't even fault someone for having the leverage to be able to leverage me out because they have the money and I don't. That's capitalism. At the same time, and kind of going back to Warren, if you want to have the case and you want to have the discussion, it's there at some point you do have to acknowledge that level of aggressiveness is borderline vulture, right? Because it inflates. Because the other thing, the secondary thing, is that even if you don't get quite what you want in the consumer space, commercial real estate's a totally separate thing. That's just dying right now, but that's another story. But and that's part of the reason for the pivot is so we're going to go to consumer because now even if the house just sits, our rents are going to go up higher because we've taken the inventory out of the market. That for me is personally frustrating because I feel I call it the law of human decency, right? there is some basic decencies we should all have in life. And even if I understand the economics and I respect the capitalist model, sometimes I look at it, it's like, go find another sector. Like, don't crush the hopes and dreams of a middle American family, which is what a lot of them have done, which is where this housing crisis, that's part of this problem. I'm frustrated because I would like a better economic situation, a better not economic reality for my attempt to purchase a home coming up in the next 4 months. But there are so many genuine, hardworking middle-class Americans that have been priced out because of the combination of that model at the front end. And now they're going to hold on for dear life because the interest rates are just, the market is so unfavorable to offload the inventory, and they don't want to take the write down or take the red. So that's a whole separate thing. And that's where my
let me add a compounding factor in here too. A lot of people that bought houses during the early part of the pandemic that are sitting on big gains right now that may be thinking, excuse me, of selling them, they can't, because if they sold them, you're going from a mortgage, if you got it in 2020, 21, 2 and change to even 5% last year. Now you're going to go out and maybe you sell your house, you're going to pay capital gains tax on it because you're going to pick up the gain. But if you reinvest in another property, now you're paying 7%.
Yeah,
Tom, that's going to keep people in their houses. Those that want to sell are going to have to lower their prices. I don't think you're going to see a 2007, 2008 collapse, but I really see, particularly in some of the hot areas, you could easily see 10 to 20% depreciation of these houses. And that may, because right now you've got buyers and sellers sort of staring at each other in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the ones I think what you're seeing right now in the housing market, if there was a place that everybody knew was dying for a market correction, San Jose, California, for example, or anything in Silicon Valley, right? Those prices are just dropping. San Francisco like a stone, because everyone knew that they were always artificially inflated by, in part the tech sector overpaying for its labor. And you're seeing that market correction, Sun Valley, Idaho, and some of those other places that were just pure vacation secondary properties. The minute that you free up some of that free money, take some of that free money out of the economy, raise some things, you're seeing those places drop. But being in Chicago, which is generally a pretty steady market, right? It goes up, goes down. One of the things that I'm seeing, and talking to, I've got a very good friend who's a real estate lawyer in this town, is that it's the stare off that you just said. It's like no one wants to leave unless they absolutely have to, because they do not want to lose that interest rate. And no one is really, and people like me are like, but you're overpriced if you are selling. And they're like, but I had this equity. It's just a very, like you said, it's kind of a standoffish type market right now. And it's just not going away anytime soon because, and again, all the credit to Powell for doing what he needs to do. As much as I don't like it for me personally, I respect it and understand it's the right course of action, but it definitely, moving those sectors around, and it will be interesting to see ultimately how, real estate plays out, because I'm hearing, from some of my friends in the industry, they're expecting 7.5 by the end of the year.
I don't doubt that. No, I used to be a mortgage banker. I'm very familiar with it. No,
I'm going to tell you,
it's not going to shock me at all to see 7.5% 30-year fixed rate mortgages. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, Tom, I want to mention this: people that took out adjustable rate mortgages a couple of years ago, man, oh man, those are popping 2%. There is going to be some pain. Let me expand on a couple of things here. You were talking about the tight job market. One thing the Fed can't control, they've raised interest rates. Yeah, it's affected the tech sector. But Tom, despite all these interest rate increases and the slowdown in tech, slowdown in housing, we still have 2 job openings for every applicant. So how are you going to get wage inflation down when there's 2 job openings for every 1 person that can apply?
You got me. I mean, it's one of those things. That's the thing I still haven't. And even my friends who, I've got a friend who's an economist that teaches at the University of Chicago, and him and I were having a conversation about it last week. And, it's unprecedented. And one of the things that he pointed out, there's also never been an easier time in human history to strike out on your own and be your own small business. And I think that that's part of what you're seeing is like some of these big companies, even when they're downsizing in tech or in other places, like it's so easy. And finally, because we've such a truly service-based economy, this is something I need to think about a little more, but it's like, it used to be in my dad's generation, right? That the middle-class American was a factory worker. They went in, the classic, Detroit auto lines and everything like that. the modern middle class for America today, especially, firmly as, being born in 1981, I'm the first millennial in my generation, is computer coding. And guess what? If you want to pick up 4 projects a year, at $15K to code Python or C++ in a stack and you're competent, you'll get paid that and then you can go do whatever you want. Like there's so many other things that are going on like that. And you're starting to see the shift in the market, which is, of course, some of those lower paying jobs. Because to code and things like that, you don't need a 4-year degree. You really don't. People are talking about the trades suffering, and they are. But what they're missing, in my opinion, in that story is how easy it is to go get 4 or 5 certifications, get some experience on low-level projects, become very competent in what you do, and then sell your services, on some of these various consulting boards for relatively solid money. But you're not inside that corporate structure because you're a little more out there for yourself. And I think that is one of those things that's specific to coding. But you're seeing that a lot in other industries where people have gained a certain level of experience. And now they're like, I don't need the 15% in the safety of corporate America. I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to take a little more risk on my own. And, you get into the spot where you've got to compete because now they've got to make it attractive enough for those people to bring them back into the quote unquote proper, the corporate workforce. I mean, I'm seeing it with some people that, I work with all the time.
I think you're right. And I'm of the theory that there are more self-employed people in the country now. And, if more people are self-employed, working for themselves, not for company, again, that's another factor driving that unemployment rate down. And, I think we're on the same page on this one, Tom. I agree with you. One thing, I saw a piece today on CNBC. They were talking about car loans. People are making car loans now, 7-8-year car loans. I even heard one doing a 9-year car loan. Can you imagine a car that depreciates? I don't know. And what it all boils down to, Tom, I think is this. Americans always want bigger, better, brighter, shinier objects. But now with these costs so high, the old thing when you buy a car, what's my monthly payment? Well, 8, 9 years, 7 for a car loan? Wow, to me, that's not very good economic sense, Tom.
Well, one, it's not good economic sense, but 2, this is one of those things where you can't quite ever get a bubble in something like this the way you get in housing. But I'm looking at it in the same way that the housing bubble and everything came out. It's like, that this loan is never going to be fully repaid. What you're counting on is somewhere in the 4 to 5 year mark that I'm going to buy again, that I want the new, brighter, shinier object for that. And it's like, for me, I tell people all the time, I spend money when it comes to things on 3 things, okay? They are my sneaker collection, they're my Legos, because I buy the absurdly large sets that take me like 24 hours to put together, and my bourbon collection. Everything else, I like experiences. To me, that's what matters. So I drove my last car into the ground with 176,000 miles. I bought a new SUV, like great, paid a little more because I had a great, the warranty on it was just incredible. And I'm going to drive that thing again into the ground because that's just who I am. And that's fine. There are plenty of people like me. But when, and even if that's how I encourage everyone to go about it. But the flip side of the coin is that they're just betting on these loans that they're going to have to recap. They're going to re-come back in so that they're always going to have that interest rate, right? They're always going to be collecting that front end interest. And at some point, I mean, come on, it's not going to happen. At some point, someone's going to overextend themselves. They're going to default on the loan, and you just hope you made up enough of the money in the 6 or 7 years before it collapses.
It's already started happening. Repossessions are starting to go up. So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm in your camp here. I mean, I'm not going to get into personal anecdotes here, but we're the same ilk there. I'm not the poster child for buying new cars because I got a couple of them that date back to 2006. So, and they're all
Mine was an 09 and it started leaking oil. And when I realized it was going to cost me more to fix that than it was the car was worth, I'm like, all right, we have hit that point.
Yeah, you hit the spot. All right, let's shift a little bit away from economics and talk some politics here. Man, we love talking politics.
Yes, we do.
What did you make of the fiasco in Washington, D.C., that city council? I mean, to me, I have a hard time fathoming. I'm going, what are these people thinking? To reduce sentences for carjackings, assaults. I mean, nonviolent crime, I get it if you want to go down that path. But carjacking, assault with weapons, and 11 out of 12 on the city council, we need to reduce these penalties for that. It was a logical response from Congress, a logical response from the Biden administration, and now all of a sudden this city council says, well, we're going to pull that. We're not going to go forward with that anymore. What'd you make of that whole fiasco, Tom?
I think that it is when you have a concept of what you would like and it doesn't marry up to the reality of the situation, but you decide that you are going to believe in your cognitive dissonance rather than the actual situation, you get something like this. I am totally with you. I'm probably farther to the left on when it comes to nonviolent crime. And like, maybe we don't overload the jails. Maybe we don't continually play into this often not talked about, but very real profit generating enterprise that prison has become. And there are some interests there that I have some very serious problems with. So it's like, if I can find a way to make it not put someone in jail, but find a way to properly rehabilitate them so they don't make the same mistake twice, I'm super here for it. However, and I thought that the TV show The Wire did a great job. I love that show in season 4 when they're talking about the kids in the schools, and as they're exploring that there is a point of sort of no return. And I mean, this is, you know, former newspaper people, former police officers, former city council people that were like writing on that show, where it's like at that point you have to make sure that society is as safe as it can possibly be first, and also work really hard on rehabilitation. But that rehabilitation happens in prison. Right? That's the thing. If it's a violent crime, if it's a gun crime, like if someone puts a gun in your face, that's a violent thing. If someone is stealing with malice, the way that you carjack someone, if, you know, I've even seen some of these things like attempted murder or like serious assaults and things like that. They were talking about forgiving too. It's like, you can't do that. Like that, you are not, there is something, that is just, it's too far. You are risking too much for the average citizen. You know, whereas if some kid shoplifted a candy bar, like, okay, well then put him in don't steal class or something like that. Like, you know, is he hungry? Is it like, there's a million things for some of these nonviolent things. But when someone rips him, you know, pulls a Glock, puts it in your car window and tells you to get the hell out of the car, like, we have crossed a Rubicon that is endangering society. And that person needs to be not only held account to that and acknowledge that danger, but they need to be removed till such a time as we can find a way to make sure that they can be safer in society.
Well, what amazed me was 147 Democrats in the House sided with the DC City Council. Obviously, they thought Biden was going to be on their side, and you know, he was not, for good reason. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just a complete fiasco. Give the mayor a little credit. She vetoed the thing and had it over. Anyhow, they were smart to pull it. It was a bad idea, and you know, we'll move on from there. But I tell you, these ultra liberal progressives, they didn't think it was a bad idea. They thought it was a good idea. That's no good. Speaking of attacks, segues right in. What about what's going on in Atlanta? 35 people arrested on domestic terrorism charges. And again, I related to it because only 2 people out of those 35, Tom, were local people. 33 came from out of state. And it's like anarchists attacking, you know, a police facility. I mean, who in their right mind does that? And this is not the last time they've done it. They've done it before.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's one of those things where if you want to have a conversation about policing versus social programs and things like that, I think there's enough data that warrants maybe we should look into some of those things. However, you know, and I'm also very against the militarization of the police. I am aggressive in my belief that cops do not need to be wearing multicam if they're in special mission units, you know, SWAT and things like that in urban environments. Like, some of the hardware they have is too much, in my opinion. Like, at some point, law enforcement is to protect the law, not, you know, and uphold the law, not necessarily be hyper aggressive the way that you see some things are. On the other hand, and here's where it really comes down. Okay. For whatever those things are, that is like 20%, in my opinion, for the things I dislike. At the end of the day, law and order must be upheld or society fails, period. Right. Okay. These organizations need places to train. They do not give cops enough training time. They do not give law enforcement in general enough ammo to train with, enough time to understand situations so you can ratchet things down. And now your solution to what you see as the problem of law enforcement being either too aggressive or not having enough training is to either try and destroy the training facility, disrupt the training facility, and do it through the very means that you're saying you're against. That's what blew my mind about it. You're going to Molotov cocktail and you're going to for what? Like, thank you for proving the point that every single person that is like pro law enforcement is saying about all this. And by the way, thank you for making my job as someone who has a level of expertise, who is willing to hear a certain level of this and willing to frankly advocate for a certain level of change that isn't pure arrest them and throw them in jail, or like, let's make the police look a little more community oriented. It's like, guess what? If I got to choose one way or the other, I'm not going your way. Like, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, because I can't look at my friends who are cops and be like, yeah, because I'm just going, yeah, dude, you're right. My bad on that one. Sorry. And I got friends who are police in the Atlanta area. Like, I just like, my bad, bro. Like, you cannot, not only can you not do that, you were doing that absolutely, you are playing into the hands of all of the people that are saying that you're a problem and are saying that this problem is bigger than it may or may not be in certain people's eyes. Like, thank you for making this impossible on almost any level, because you can't not react to that in exactly the way they are. You can't. You are the problem.
Yeah, no. I concur with you 100%. And it's just, to me, it's just incredible. I mean, domestic terror is representative of what they really are. And again, it's not a local thing. Only 2 of those 35 are from the state of Georgia. So these people came in, they had a mission, and now they're going to deal with the charges behind it. Speaking of violence, and over your shoulder, you've got the 20-year war. Tom, the Biden administration's gone out of his way to tell China, do not ship lethal weapons to Russia. I don't know if that's being listened to or not, but battles are raging in Ukraine right now. Depending upon what media outlet you listen to, sometimes you're hearing, well, the Ukrainians are doing great. Others, the Russians are taking this town. There's a lot of damage on both sides. And whether the Russians are taking casualties at a rate of twice the Ukrainians, which is probably true, maybe more than that. But Tom, this thing is really showing no sign at all of abating.
It's not, and I will be interested to see what happens when the Ukrainian forces are trained up on those Leopard 2s and they start their spring offensive. I'm guessing probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I don't have any inside intel on that one right now. I haven't really checked my sources, but I would guess it's about what's happening. I think that's when you're going to get a little more clarity. I think with the China versus the U.S. in the sort of shadow game is, I think that this is China looking for cracks in the armor to try and make increased decisions on Taiwan. That's what because the other thing is that if Russia craters, which they will if they lose all this, and become essentially an OPEC state. I mean, Venezuela and Europe is more or less what Russia's heading for if they lose this, depending on the sanctions. That does not help China at all. If anything, it now makes someone that used to be considered a very strong ally in the world now a more desperate nation on their largest port. Like, nothing good happens if Russia falls for China. Absolutely nothing. So at some point, I think they've got to try and do something, and they've got to try and figure out a way to like navigate this and save some face, help the Russians save some face to prop up their position. But I think that they're running at this point, it's gone on long enough. They have a plan. They're trying to run their own war games, politically, economically, theoretically, to see what would happen if they did make a more aggressive move against Taiwan. That's kind of my read on it.
So this is all prelude to Taiwan. And you could be right about that. I mean, but in Ukraine, one thing that concerns me a little bit, and again, I've supported generally the Biden administration's policies about whatever it takes for Ukraine to win. Unfortunately, some people in my party are saying, let's take a little look at this. We're spending a lot of money over there. It's the old traditional, hey, we got a lot of problems in this country. Why are we sending it there? I think I have had very little criticism of the administration for how they've prosecuted this war. And, I may be on the outside of what some people in my party believe, but that's how I feel. I mean, I think there's nothing more important than supporting an innocent country that was invaded. I mean, that's what happened. Now, I'm all for auditing. I don't have a problem with audit, figure out where the money's went, weapons, et cetera. But we've got to, between the United States and NATO, continue to do everything we can to help these people, in my opinion.
And you nailed it with NATO. And I am, as much as I'm frustrated with Germany in this situation, I am glad to see Poland and the United Kingdom really step up, and they're really being much more aggressive in there. And then you've got what they're calling the Budapest Nine, which are the former Eastern Bloc countries that are now part of NATO that are just demanding of NATO, which they should. Oh, no, 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 no. You guys are not walking out on us. We are here until the end. And the end is them retreating out of the territory they invaded. You know, I mean, I know Zelensky wants Crimea. If I could wave a magic wand, I think that should go back into Ukraine. It never should have left in the first place, so to speak. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm hearing on that one. I'm hearing a couple of different things, but I agree. And it's like, if you want to audit something, that's fine. I just hope that some of the people that you were super war hawkish when it came to Iraq and it came to Afghanistan will be a little honest about just how hard it is to account for every dollar and every bullet in the middle of a war zone. Okay. I'm not saying that you can't have a certain level of oversight and accountability. I am super here for it. But the way you hear some of these people talk about it, I'm like, what, you think someone's like counting every like round as it goes out the barrel of an AK? Like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, man. Like, you know, or when, you know, an arty shell hits a convoy and blows up a truck, like, what, are we instantly there with like the accountants in the ledger or something?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
I'm with you. I'm with you 100% on that. We got a few minutes left because I know you're on a hard break. Back to politics for a minute here. We talked about Biden. You know, his approval rating, Tom, has inched up. All right, he's up to 46. Now, there was a time last year when you and I were talking about him, and he was 38 to 40. Yep. That's a big gap at 46. However, only 37% of Democrats want him to run for re-election. I mean, they see the same guy up there that we see. Mm-hmm. It appears they like his policies, they like him, but they don't feel he can defeat a Republican unless, of course, it's Trump. But, you know, there was no qualifiers in there. 37% just say that, you know, only 37% want him to run. What are the alternatives, Tom?
Oof. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things, like, they had a plan, they had a succession plan, and then Harris got frustrated, jumped the gun, and kind of seems like she still ruined it. When you look at it, you know, the one that jumps to mind right away, well, pre East Palestine would have been Buttigieg, you know, or Pete as the transportation secretary. He was, you know, I heard from people he was being groomed, you know, to like on the 12-year plan, if you will. I don't think he can't get back on it, if you will, but it certainly isn't happening for him in 2024, in my opinion. Like, you look at the field, and I just don't see someone that is readily apparent to be there. And I also, interesting, like, I really don't see anyone from like sort of the Obama machine and those acolytes, or the Clinton machine and those, like, there really isn't like a rising star the way that, you know, that right. Obama was when he came up. Like, I just don't see, I don't see it. And I think that what's really interesting is the Republicans are having a bloodbath on their hands. They are. Oh, and
I think Biden's going to run.
Oh, I think Biden's going to run, but I'm saying for the nomination, Trump's not giving up. Period. That's just who he is. And I think that if that field gets crowded the way that it did, you know, last time in 2016, and everyone's just chipping each other off, and people don't bow out fast enough, Trump is going to win again for the nomination, because that's how he did it the first time. Yeah,
I hate to say it, if he's our nominee, we'll lose, because he's not going to carry the states we need to carry to win. Which is, again, if he's our nominee, I'm going to support him, but I don't think he'd win. You know, it's interesting, Larry. You're along the lines where you're talking about Larry Hogan, well-respected Republican governor of a deep blue state, you know, left office with a high approval rating. He said he's not going to run. And I think he used the term, you know, I don't want to be on a kamikaze mission. So,
well, yeah. I mean, I didn't, just especially because I know, you know, hopefully, you know, how respectful I am ultimately of the process, and how much I believe, I really wish that the Republican Party could come back to what I saw it as. But everything that you need to know about Hogan not running and the kamikaze mission is just look at what CPAC that just wrapped up. Well, CPAC's become a joke. It's become a joke.
Tom, I spoke to a couple participants earlier today. They were highly disappointed. Yeah. You know, it really turned into a Trump fest, is what it become. And yeah, this person who I got to remain nameless, he said attendance was 25% of what it traditionally had been when they moved it back to DC, but a lot of issues. I won't get into that right now, but yeah, it turned into a Trump fest. You know, talking about candidates and why Biden, I think, is while the perception of Biden is what it is, you and I talked about this during the election season. That guy in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, who was not qualified. There is no way this guy was qualified to be a senator, and yet he won. Mm-hmm. Now, in the hospital, been in for a while, still in for depression. Look, and that's not uncommon. People that have strokes to the level he had, it's a common medical condition, but everything a lot of people were saying during the campaign, well, it came true. The man hasn't been a senator now for 3 months, and, it's questionable.
So, I mean, first, I want to be very clear. Someone who's struggled with their own mental health challenges, first, foremost, and always, I hope nothing but for him to recover and have a speedy one at that. Because there's humanity as some of these things gets lost in politics, and especially with him versus Oz, there was so much of that got lost. Yeah. I will go back to what I said the entire election season and the entire time. Candidacy quality matters. And to take the CPAC thing about the joke, that the problem that people like me who have voted solidly red before, and I'm like super sitting here in the middle being like, I don't think so. This is an excellent example of it. He never should have won. A half decent candidate, half decent, romps him. This never would have been an issue. But when you let the super fringe not only take over one of the primary conferences and places where you're supposed to evolve and talk about your ideology, and you're just demagoguing someone, and you lose, and that guy gets a celebrity that is such a poor quality, he loses to this person. This is everything that, in my opinion, the Republican Party needs to pay attention to and really needs to start saying, we have got to fix this. Someone has got to start standing up to that. I'll give you another example, too. This whole Dominion voting thing. Fox is probably going to lose that website or that lawsuit. I mean, they are in real trouble with that. And
and that's a big number, too.
Because they were just scared of the ratings. They were just scared that they were going to lose these nuts people, okay? And I'm not talking about even the relatively far, like center right and all,
run-of-the-mill status quo Republican.
I am not talking about you, okay? I am not.
You're talking about me.
No, you're way more my people there than but it's like, you have to go, if you're going to look at a normal curve, it's only the second to far and farthest deviations, the true fringe that I'm talking about, okay?
Right.
The oxygen in that room needs to be just completely taken out, and people need to stop listening to it, because this is entire endemic of just something that is rotten because of his cult of personality that I'm looking for a reason, honestly, to be able to vote more right than what I have historically. And I don't, it's so hard when I see some of those things happen. And it's like the fact that Fox is now coming out and saying that, you can just keep going on. I am so deeply concerned, because the other part of the problem is that it gives more voice to the farthest crazies on the left, which then makes me even more mad. And the farther we go out to those polls, the less the voice an average American has. Like, come on, guys, come on back. You're not actually moving left. You're just moving back to center of the right. Like, come on back, right? Like, give me a reason.
It's still, I still believe we have a slight tilt center right country, and I'm with you on there. I'm with you 100%. I think we're going to, in the next couple months, I think Tim Scott's going to announce, and I think Ron DeSantis, governor of my home state of Florida, is going to announce. Tom, there's a reason 800 to 1,000 people a day are moving into this state, and it's not because it sucks. Okay, it's pretty damn nice. Okay, so a lot of good stuff. Hey, we got about 1 or 2 minutes left. I know you got a hard break, and we got to close it out. One comment, Tom. Classified documents, the Pence, the Trump, the Biden thing. Well, and I saw some Meet the Press over the weekend. Both Democrats and Republicans heading these committees are not getting information from the FBI. I mean, closing comment. Any thoughts on that? I mean, this is not one party. I mean, both are not getting what they've requested.
I still think it's political grandstanding. If the FBI is telling them, as what I've been told, is that there are active criminal investigations, okay, nothing leaks more like a sieve in Washington than the House, than Capitol Hill. Nothing. Yeah. So if the FBI has an active criminal investigation going on, which I'm sure that they do, right, and they're looking at both sides, which let's also take a step back and realize how fair and correct that is. Again, I've got all the smoke for those people. They should have been in steel bracelets, period. People like us, we would have been. So give them some time to actually run the criminal investigation, especially when you take the other step and realize that one of those people being investigated is the current president of the United States and the other person that's the former president of the United States. This requires a little bit of tact and a little bit of patience. And I know Congress wants to get their grubby little paws on it, but this isn't a congressional issue yet. This is a legal matter. Let the criminal investigation play out.
I'll accept what you said there. So look, I'm going to close it out with this. You know, there was some late breaking news today. 4 Americans that went into Mexico, 2 killed, 2 got out. Folks, be careful when you go to areas anywhere in the world where the State Department warns you this is a dangerous area. Just keep your caution flag up, because there's as usual, if you've experienced, Tom, this is not a safe world, and you got to be careful what you're doing. Particularly
situational awareness in all times and all places.
Absolutely. Tom, I look forward to having you back soon. I know you got a hard break coming up, but thanks for joining me again today. Insights and analysis, spot on from the center. Love chatting with you.
I always love hanging out on the show, Mark. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Okay, thanks. Folks, that's it for today. We'll see you later in the week. And as always, we'll cut through the BS and the propaganda, and we'll tell you what's really going on. One thing's going on. Stocks are heading south today because Wall Street didn't believe Jerome Powell when he said he was going to raise rates and keep them there longer. All right, it'll get better, though, down the road. See you later in the week, folks. Thanks for viewing and listening today.